Okay, good evening. I seem to have lost my voice a little bit, so tonight I will need the microphone. I don't usually. I want to welcome all of you. I'm Richard Sommer, the Dean of the Daniels Faculty, and this is our first public lecture of the 2013-14 academic year, and it's this year's Kohn Shnier Architects Lecture. We have an impressive roster of speakers lined up for you, those of you who attend most of the series and our students. The list includes local, international, all sorts of architects, landscape architects, and urban designers. And tonight's speaker will be no exception to that. But before introducing him to all of you, I want to take a little bit of time to draw your attention to some of the other things we'll be doing in the near future. As most or all of you know, the Daniels Faculty is undergoing a major project that will transform the Crescent. Behind me. I should know that by now. Nadir Tirani will give a lecture on November 5th. He's spoken in various capacities, but this will be actually not just about our project, but about the design of schools of architecture and schools of design. A lecture on November 5th. And also, in case you haven't seen it, there is an exhibition on the project in the Eric Arthur Gallery in the front hall. So have a look at that. We'll make sure it's open after the lecture. Next week, we'll present the first event in this year's Daniels Fora series. And if you haven't reserved your tickets, please sure to go online because they're going fast. The title of this fora is called Sustainability and Its Discontents, and it will feature what I think will be one of our more argumentative and provocative fora or forums thus far. It will feature a debate between Robert Brugman, the best-selling author of the book Sprawl, A Compact History, and Vishen Chakrabarty, who's the author of the newly released book A Country of Cities, A Manifesto for Urban America. The presentations and discussions will follow and examine what are really deep-seated conflicts and assumptions that underlie the discourse and politics surrounding sustainable urbanism, and each speaker will provide a very different perspective on where the sustainable, or now as they say, resilient future may lie for at least North American cities. So please go to the website for more information on that. So on to tonight's speaker, David Van Severen, who will be presenting tonight's Kohn Shnier lectures. I want to start by acknowledging John Shnier of Kohn Shnier Architects, whose generous donation makes this evening lecture possible. John, thank you. John is an associate professor at of long-standing at the Daniels Faculty. He's also a partner along with Marty Kohn, who's here tonight, in the Kohn Shnier Architects, a firm that has won many prestigious awards and completed many important commissions and continues in that trajectory to this day. In terms of design quality and a commitment to elevating the cause of design in Toronto, they are among our strongest forces in the city. Now, John has provided the Daniels Faculty with philanthropic support over many years, preferring to direct his giving to initiatives that, and this is a quote, make for a richer learning and experience for students and colleagues, which is a pretty broad mandate. We decided that given the kind of value of this contribution, that we would formalize John's support for the school last year by establishing the Kohn Shnier Architects Lecture. And John's also characteristically generous way, he left the selection of the speaker really open, but he had certain criteria that they be highly recognized, influential within their milieu, and that they possess some sort of balance between professional, educational, experimental, and community contributions. He also has certain guidelines about age and where they are in their career. I can't go into all of these things, but so David Van Severen and his firm Office are especially fitting choice to deliver this lecture. And for this year, we did something new for the way we put the series together. We made a call to the Daniels Faculty's Facebook and Twitter followers for suggestions who we might invite. And Office was among the most interesting and suggestions, especially from our students. So we looked at a number of recommendations, but this is the one that rose to the top. Since forming in 2002, Office has risen to international prominence with projects in Antwerp, Brussels, Leuven, and Paris. Their work has included quasi-utopian city proposals, single-family houses, government buildings, as well as exhibition designs and pavilions. In 2005, Kersten, Geers, and David van Severen gained international attention with two competition-winning projects: a grammar for the city, a new administrative capital in South Korea, and Border Garden, a border crossing between Mexico and the USA. In 2008, the firm represented Belgium in the 11th Architecture Biennale in Venice. 2 years later, they were invited by Geers Sejima of the firm Sana to participate in the 12th Architectural Biennale with their powerful installation, 7 Rooms, 21 Perspectives, designed in collaboration with the Dutch photographer Bas, I'm not going to get this right, Bas Prinsen. This garnered them the Silver Lion Award for the most promising young architects. An overview of their work, described by curator and editor Moritz Kung as, quote, half modern and half something else, was recently published in the issue number 63 of 2G International Architecture magazine, which said that this firm is part of a whole new generation of incredibly talented architects that are coming out of Belgium. So I suppose what I find most interesting and compelling about Office's work is how it is infused with an historical consciousness about architecture as a discipline. Now, we would think that all important work this is true for all important work, but it actually has not been the case in the recent generations. When Kung says that their work is half modern, half something, one has to wonder what he means by modern and what the something else is. What I see is that after a period of unbridled enthusiasm for the kind of sculptural exuberance and that digital software and computation-driven modeling allow, exercises most notably achieved in the work of, let's say, Asymptote, or even, more publicly, Frank Gehry or Zaha Hadid, we see in this work a return to the language of modern architecture, and I think more importantly, the very grammar of building. And this is something a few generations back that was really brought to a very poetic heights by figures such as John Haydock in the United States, and in Europe by people like Andrea Branzi and Arcazum, or even later Giorgio Grassi. So, and in their work there's also, of course, you'll see a bit of the minimalist aesthetics of the best Japanese work. So when one looks at the work of Office, one can see that, like these earlier figures, their way of drawing and representing architecture contains a sophisticated understanding of the effects that simple acts of repetition and mirroring can produce. Rather than architecture as art, we see an artful architecture, one that is subtle, sober, sensuous, and when necessary, even silent. So please welcome, for the first time here in Toronto, David van Severen.
Thank you, Richard. Also, thank you, John, and all of you for being here. I have a quite extensive lecture prepared, 150 slides. So I'll try to do my best to round it up in an hour and a bit. Okay, so I'm David van Severen. Kersten Geers is my partner. We have an office in Brussels with about 10 or 15 employees. But I'll show you our work. I gave this lecture the title Talk About Space, with a subtitle on perimeters, rooms, cutouts, and boxes. First image. It's a painting by Edward Rocher. It's called Talk About Space. For us, it's an important work in the sense that it's a canvas. Here it's shown a bit bigger than in real, and Edward Rocher says that words don't have scale, so they can fill up the complete canvas, the complete frame made by the canvas. The perimeter of it. To show that, he puts the word space, but also puts a little pencil on the bottom of the painting, which in real is scale 1:1. So it's about measuring, it's about scale, and it's about frame and content, perimeter. Rooms. Rooms comes back a lot in our work. The idea of room, what is a room, even in relation to a perimeter? Is it about size or not? This is a picture by Bas Prinsen, a photographer already mentioned by Richard. We work always with, as he's an independent, makes independent work, artist photography, but he agreed to always take pictures of our work, almost as an exception to his other work. So rooms, cutouts. This is John Baldessari. Crowds with shape of reason missing. Very nice title. By cutting away what this image or picture was really about, somehow he alters this perception of the image itself. And what is very interesting is that background and foreground become very shift in a way, and it's just by cutting it away or almost taking it with a white marker out of the image. And then boxes. Boxes, again, Bas Prinsen, beautiful picture he took somewhere in Houston. Boxes, they have an appearance, but they disappear also here very clearly. It's about skin, it's about figure, ground, horizon, and then again perspective. So now, maybe about these categories, don't take them too serious. It's almost each, I will show you 12 projects, and each of the projects could jump just to the other category. They're completely, in a way, irrelevant almost, but it's funny. It's almost like a story in one of Louis Borges' tales. He tells about a Chinese emperor who has these categories for animals, and you have the yellow animals, the jumping animals, the one with wings, and so on. I mean, each category almost already putting in danger the other category. So this is a bit similar. First perimeter. Already told you about by Richard, this is a competition we won in 2005 for a border crossing, a pedestrian border crossing between the United States and Mexico. As you all know, there's a gigantic fence running in the desert between two countries. And so what about it? How can you make, in that condition, still architecture? It's people tend to think of the difficult political situation, the fence and so on. But is there still space for architecture? So our proposal is very simple. We make a break in this fence and make actually even a higher wall as a perimeter surrounding a no man's land. No man's land which always exists between two countries, and where you have one entrance on one side and one exit or entrance at the other side. And basically it's a wall surrounding an oasis, a grid of palm trees, and palm trees that give you shade. It's also about being very humble and very pleasant. Imagine that space where you would normally wait, queue with the passport being checked. That could happen in the shade of the palm trees in an oasis. We call the project Border Garden, and it also refers in many ways to almost traditional cities like in Algeria, you have Mazab, where you have let's say the city, but also the garden of the city, which is a walled entity, a garden where water, the minimum of water, is used with the maximum effect to really create this lush oasis. And so, in a way, it struck us that this could be, as a plan, also something relating to the landscape it stands in, this Tex-Mex desert, could relate to, as in scale to that, and by even making a high wall, a wall higher than this original fence, you could make this space for a border crossing. A question that is mainly infrastructural, you could say. It's interesting to think of infrastructure as being space as such. Another perimeter, or a room, or a box. This is the Venice Biennale. We won a competition for the Belgian pavilion in 2008. So we got a commission to present Belgium in the Biennale for 2008. And the Belgian pavilion, I have this thing here, is this one. You will see there are always the same aerials with the cutout being the project. In the Giardini with the Italian pavilion. The Belgian pavilion is actually the second pavilion built in the Giardini in Venice. It's built in 1907. And in 2008, it basically just missed its 100th birthday. And in the question of the competition that was being held and been written out by Moritz Kohn, already mentioned, they asked, what could you do in an architecture biennale, since the 80s existing idea, the biannual of architecture, switching with the art biannual each time. So what about architecture? How can you show architecture? That was the question. And what we decided was that we would show just the pavilion as it was standing there already 100 years, 101 years. But we made a new pavilion for that. So this was the Belgian pavilion 2008. It looked like this. It was a box at first sight, standing in the Giardini and creating an insight. And there was a door to that box. But that box is actually not a box, but is a perimeter or a wall, making a room around the existing pavilion. The existing pavilion had this strange oblique implantation in the Giardini, probably one of the first pavilions, so they didn't really know yet how to build further, but so it was like almost a mistake. So the new pavilion, almost a small correction to that mistake. But it made a room for that old pavilion. It blocked the main entrance to the Giardini, and it made a new entrance going. So the door you saw before is there, and so you would go through the wall, and that's I'll tell you about that later. To enter the existing pavilion, come out, discover a new patio garden, and for us, it's very important to say that even if you make an installation, because this is an installation, it's temporary, 3 months, even then, we think you should make architecture. It should be precise, it should not look temporary, it should be a project really being considered as till the detail, as if you would make an architectural project that would last forever. So this wall we made, it's a wall 7 meters high, and the longest side was 30 meters, I think. We had to make it there in real. And after a few after the competition, we had to be realistic and really get that ambition that we put forward, get it done. And this is a wall we made out of scaffolding, not just any scaffolding. We were in Italy a lot these days, and Italy has beautiful scaffolding, like Italian cars, they make also beautiful scaffolding. And so we discovered this around all these monuments in Venice and Rome, and the scaffolding was amazing. We decided, let's do it with the scaffolding, but let's make a piece of architecture out of it. And this is the plan, or let's say the modular plan of the scaffolding, making a wall which has a thickness which you can walk through, which becomes also the real entrance to it, but which then is been dressed by these walking boards, which are normally used for the scaffolding to walk in. These galvanized steel walking boards became also the final cladding or facade of the structure, making it into this box. And obviously this thickness of the wall also provided its stability towards wind and so on. This is the inside image of the wall. And after walking through that wall, you would come in this space, a set of spaces just empty, nothing else except for space. Openings, white walls, chairs scattered around, and confetti on the floor. And walking out, more confetti. This confetti, it's a funny anecdote, but we were looking for, within that whole new project for the Belgian Pavilion 2008, we were looking for a pragmatic solution to cover the complete new floor of the new pavilion, and how to do that in a temporary way, not to get extreme and make a new floor. No, we were wondering for something that you could throw out and it would make a new floor, and confetti came. And, and in a strange way, and that's maybe important to say, it also finally gave the title to the project. This project was called After the Party. The pavilion had just missed its 100th birthday, and the chairs were just standing around as if, you know, everything else, what happened was just gone and over. But still, you could have the space as such. Maybe also in a context, which is the biennial of architecture, which is very loud, very, a lot of people. This moment where you can just sit in the sun and be in a new garden defined by this space, that could be also enough for a architecture biennial. A whole other scale. This is Belgium, Kortrijk, a city in West Flanders. Well, it's a piece of highway actually next to the city, and a big complex, a fairground complex, exhibition complex, being built since the 60s for big fairs to be organized, and growing since the 60s. This hall was the first hall, and then they added, and so on. And when this complex wanted to extend again, the city asked us, and also them, to think about it, because it was becoming a mess. It was just a set of backsides, docking stations, asphalted areas, logistics everywhere, but no real clear orientation. Very heterogeneous field of let's say, boxes. glued together. What we designed, or what we decided as a master planner, and we became later also the architect, was that this set of boxes just needed a frame. It was almost like the style paintings of Mondrian, Van Tongerlo, and so on. You know, the surfaces jumping around between on the canvas, but this one just needed still a frame. And it was just a set of spaces in the end. This frame, it existed already somehow around the site. The site had a path, but very unclear, so what we did was just mark that path clearly. And this is what it became. So as I said, after a first phase, very fast, of master planning, they asked us also to be on board for the architecture. And this is a gallery. Finally, this frame became a gallery around the whole complex, framing it and also making a line, let's say, between logistic space and the space in front, the city. That line, if you can see in the plan, is something special, in the sense that this whole complex has been built on a grid size of on 570 meters, so 5 meters 70 centimeters by 570, and this is invisible in the whole building because you add facades and thicknesses of whatever, and you just have a bunch of boxes, right? So what we decided, it was quite beautiful as an idea that you, even from the 60s on, you build a complex always on the same grid, but still you wouldn't see it. So what we decided is, let's make a ruler against that system, or along that system, a ruler of 570 by 570 by 570, all the time repeating this dimension, and putting a column at each of these coordinates on this line. So these are all units of 570, but here, since we made a gallery just to walk around the complex and to make that frame, we didn't need any isolation or whatever, so we could just make it as pure as just a column. And it somehow measures the complex. It is an inverted gallery, where a gallery normally looks towards the square, or the public space it takes or it embraces. This one looks out to the city, and it has a certain transparency going in. So you will see in the pictures here, there's screens hanging in the back, and there's, let's say, green area which also been completely redone together with Bas Metz, actually, landscape architect. And I mean, but apart from being a line where you can just walk in and which somehow arranges that site, it's also a very dubious line, because obviously when the big fair comes and needs to put extra tents and so on, they would end up in the grass. But why not? It's almost like a city wall where in the end, when the circus comes, they put the circus outside the city wall and no problem. So that line, you have to also understand that as something which is not that strict, and the actual ambiguity of that is very important. Till it even becomes a building where you could buy tickets, entrance. And that building, as you can see here, there's the gallery, and at some point they asked also, there's extra programs, so what about this extension? There's a new box, the new hall they built, they made new flat plateaus to build up tents and so on, but also offices. And offices, we put them on top of the gallery with this kind of detail. And in this unit system of 570, we somehow could fit 3 floors. So one beam is in front of the windows here. And this is the south entrance of the complex, underneath here. The north entrance is due to get also a similar building, but then standing straight as a tower. But then again, maybe it's not so much about that. It's really about creating frame and content. This perimeter framing in very different ways, very different situations. This is also a hall that we have built behind the perimeter, because that's where you could still build. But it's just part of the set of halls. It doesn't have, let's say, extra architectural value apart from being at the right spot. Okay, I'll maybe have to a bit fasten up. Belgium also, a house. A house. Belgium, and it's maybe good for you to know, Belgium is a very densely populated country. There's 10 million people or a bit more. And especially Flanders is quite a small area with 7 million people, something like that. And so space is really, we're running out of it. And each person has the dream of having a house, a single family house, a villa with its own terrain, and that what's obviously taking away all that space. So there's endless suburbs in the whole of Flanders. Actually, it becomes almost a continuous city. And we are sometimes faced with a question for one of these dreams of one of these families. And this one is one of these. But they found somehow a quite beautiful lot, somewhere still where there's not everything is built like this, but it was the end of a development, and this is assured to be staying agricultural area. And in the back, even further on, there's a forest. This is a bit a part of it. So, as a site in Belgium, this would be, this is very good. In Canada, I can imagine it's different, but let's take it for like this is the situation. So, but it's interesting. What about it? This dream of any family building a house, building it in the middle of the landscape. The idea of that freedom. This is how the house looked like. Again, all pictures are by Bas Prins, and one of my favorite pictures. The house, as such, it's a house that has been defined by something very special. Because of that situation of, let's say, allotment and like small parcels everywhere filled with houses, people put fences everywhere. So fences, 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 and then between these fences, people made their ideal house. In our idea, we decided if it couldn't be interesting to give back, in a way, piece of the site and put a fence as the first house inside the terrain. So this is the private property. And almost giving back to wilderness, let's say, a part of your own site. So the perimeter defined on this lot is actually the fence, but actually also already the house. And you could almost, as in Villa Savoie, drive around it as on a little farmer's road and go back out. And the actual door of the building would be on the side. You had two entrances. One is a back entrance and one is a front entrance, but they're both on the side. And maybe as a side remark, inside that fence we made that ideal plan, that ideal villa. almost as Villa Rotonda of Palladio would be the ideal dream of let's say, a villa in the landscape. So the plan underneath is, or inside this fence is very simple. It's a set of 9 rooms defined by this cross of walls and openings. And on top, there's another house. There's, let's say, the roof house, which is the same plan, but with 9 rooms, with a central stair, but which has the outside wall also built. And these 2 universes, it's also fundamental in how we think about how you live. So the first house is a stone house. It's made in a very mineral way, being framed by these 2 patios defined by the fence. The roof house is made out of wood entirely, and almost as a roof put on top of the stone house, but makes the same plan. And actually, living here is completely different as living here. And here you are in relation with this patios defined by the fence. And then again, it's outside, the wilderness, let's say. Here you have the view over the fence, towards the fields and the forest. And the fence is grown over by a plant we discovered in the forest, a climbing plant. I forgot the name, I don't know it in English for sure. And the house. So the house is super open below and quite close, but precisely perforated at the top. And in all its design and decision making, it is a complete universe of, let's say, experiencing this as being your space of living, ground floor, adding the windows, completely sliding from here, which is this is the kitchen, to there, for example, as an add-on. So you don't see the frame when you're standing in, you only hang it on the outside. And the same here, so the openings here, which have these panels to close off for the night, or for light, they are similar as doors in all these openings. But then again, the windows are glued on top. So there's no vision of a profile. And these kind of things are very important for us too, in the sense that how can you design a window that fits with this idea of rooms that have openings. And openings mean, in this case, no profile. So the profiles sit in front, as you can see. And some of these rooms are just outdoor, like these. That's the entrance situation, 3 rooms in a row or in an enfilade, connecting 3 spaces covered, but outdoors. And indoors are these spaces. And then we go up in the wooden house. There's certain living quarters downstairs, but there's living quarters upstairs. And there's just an idea of almost a very essential way of living downstairs, very bare. And upstairs there is a certain comfort or warmness, let's say. Maybe more, you're here more in the winter, who knows. And even bathrooms and bedrooms, they just fit in this system of rooms. And then again, the fence making its outside. Also funny is this window. It had to be able to slide completely open, had to cross the fence. So we made this kind of cantilevering, not that difficult detail. But that's the consequence of the design. Why not? Rooms. Rooms. Obviously the previous project could be perfectly in this chapter. This is again Belgium, It's Merchtem. It's a small, very small city, almost like a village, but still, yeah, let's say very unclear its status. A lot of these little towns, villages in Belgium, Flanders. And this is a funny project because the client, they are, both of them, they are dentists. And the guy, he is actually originally from Iran, but lives all his life in Belgium. And they somehow inherited this house. And he came and rang the bell of our office one day. That doesn't happen so much, that people, clients ring your doorbell. And so that was, this guy was doing it, and he came with pictures of this existing house in that context, and he said, you know what, we want to make our weekend house there. And we were looking at him. I mean, you have to know, this is one of, it's very depressing area. This is totally without any dream or idea of weekend you couldn't imagine. But we were there, okay, why not? This question alone already was so strange. He was talking about chickens, about a pool, about things like that, and then you see this typical Belgian, by the way, situations of development of houses that occupy these long strips, and then there's some leftover in the middle mostly, but these are all like, and each of these houses, they've been built in the 50s or whatever, before even, and gradually grow with build-outs until the garden is full of little sheds and very bad quality extras. So this house too, it had that. So what about that? We made this collage. It's a mix of Rousseau and Mies' universe as an idea to present the client, imagine you could do this. Why not? The chicken, and then the client. The pool also. But I think a lot in our work also, there's the idea of hedonism, the idea of the human body. It's the idea of enjoying just that basic idea of space and the mix maybe even with nature. And this is the final project. So, as I explained, these sites have always these long, narrow strips being somehow gardens. And this is the original house. So here's the street. Here was a carport, we broke it down. But mainly, here was full of these sheds in the garden. And we said, okay, let's tear down all the sheds, just save the little house standing at the street side, and make a new house, the weekend house. And the weekend house would be actually the complete garden, would be the house. And in a strange way, we discovered it's 40 meters by 10 meters wide. A sort of a measure system in there. We could fit in perfectly 4 square rooms. 4 rooms that would make that weekend house. And in section, this is again the original house, the street, you could have a sequence of different universes which were completely yours. In the back of that Flemish, depressing situation, you could have your dream coming true. And each of these rooms, our garden, our house, our space. So 10 by 10 meter, each of them. And they have a roof sometimes, like this one. This is, let's say, the main covered weekend house space. But this is the pool. This is the first, like, patio room next to this house. There's a roof, this one, that can roll from one room to the other. So, depending also on seasons, you could make this into a very compact house with a covered pool, or summer or spring, you open up this room almost like a convertible car and have a open air pool. And in the back, there's a very traditional, let's say, Belgian or European garden. This is how it looks. So these strips, as you can see everywhere. Here's another build-out, other mess. This is the house. With, in this condition, the roof, which is, one is a glazed roof, the other one not, sits on top of the first room. And you can see this room is a garden also. And the entrance, where the carport was before, there you can actually see between the house and the neighbor, you can see a first glimpse of the system in the back. The system being actually a set of rooms with a set of doors with openings, always at the same place. And this door, by consequence, became there. And it's also, you can still put your car, you can still open the door, there's a little entrance roof. But then, once enter, you're here. And this is, we restored a bit this house also. I mean, these openings, they were all where they are, but they were still built out in the garden, other things, so we cut that off. This house almost works as a silo of spaces for family that would come in during Christmas or other holidays. They could put them all in this house and still have the weekend house for themselves. And the perspective through this weekend house looks also into the original house. In the second room, almost David Hockney, Bigger Splash, one of our favorite paintings. So Bas took that picture. Somebody had to dive really and to get the real David Hockney moment. Also, the garden is a complete different garden because it's a subtropical garden. It's possible here since it will never freeze in this space. When in the winter time, the roof will be on top. And then again, the perspective, very important. These enormous sliding windows, they slide actually between two walls because each of the rooms has been defined by just their walls being made out of brick with this beam laying on top in steel. And the next room is again that other wall. And in between, we could solve the detail of, let's say, these big openings, which create, again, almost frameless. They have frames, but they're all recessed. And if they're open, it slides in between the double wall. So we could create these perspectives throughout the whole house, going from room to room to room. This is the detail, as I was explaining before, with the pool, the sliding roof, which rolls on top, almost like an industrial roll bridge. So all these details, they're also, in a way, we like the idea of very pragmatic, in the end, solutions to quite ambitious projects, like a sliding roof or disappearing walls. It doesn't have to be that difficult, actually. Could be quite industrial, even. So even this is the room where you can sleep. There's also a kitchen and so on. And we were faced also with the idea of rooms. We made a lot of projects with rooms. The previous project you've seen, the house with the fence, has rooms 4 by 4 meter. This one has 10 by 10 meters. So when is a room not a room anymore? It's interesting. Because, so what we decided is at 10 by 10 meters, it needs something like anchors of gravity to hold things in that quite big space. So this one is a big paravent standing here. There's a kitchen behind it. You had seen the first room had a concrete ping pong table and a roof to connect the old house with the new one. There's the pool. And there's actually, if I can go back once, there's this element, this kind of mirroring cylinder. It's the actual bathroom of the whole house, which stands outdoor in this situation, but when the roof is closed, it's just indoor. And it works with the pool, obviously, but also with this house, where there's a door behind here, still in the same system of doors. And a fireplace in between two rooms. And this is the last room, and it is also, again, coming to the end, showing its complete, let's say, logic of how it's built up. So the last room is a classical garden with a lawn and a tree, which was existing actually. So we just framed the tree within these walls. And the last window is just hanging on the back of these walls, and they are not painted in the back neither. It's just the rough brickwork with even the electricity built on the backside. That would be in this hollow space between these two walls. So, funnily enough, I mean, after the whole parcours, because it took 4 years, I think, to make this, it is possible to make that dream of a weekend house, well, in our opinion, in Merchtem. Another house, and it's in the room category. I don't know why, I think so, yeah, it's quite clear actually. So this is a house, a city house, let's say. It's in Brussels, but in quite a nice area in Brussels. It's also for a single family, and they bought an existing house in this area. And they asked us to make an extension to this house. And as you've seen in our previous project, I mean, extensions in architecture, we find it very difficult but challenging. The difficulty is that you could get this kind of style clash, because the original house standing here was quite a classical 50s house. So how to extend that? The house was standing on a little hill, and it had a small basement. So we thought, like, what if we slide the extension under the existing house? We take away the hill, you don't walk up anymore, which you would do, and then enter the house from the side. No, complete new house under the house. And this is how it's been realized. It's strange because you don't know what's before or after. It's almost like a pedestal for the old house. It stands on the new house. So we had to dig away and make retaining walls and all that. But mainly also, a bit similar as the project before, this becomes a silo of bedrooms. It's the night house. And this is the day house. And the day house has a very different logic as the night house, which is just the original house, obviously. But it's a house made out of columns. Almost, it has to support the other house. But also the column, as an idea, it's very interesting. What can you do with a column? Well, you can make rooms. So this plan is the plan of the house at the street level. And it's filling the entire plot area until the garden, where the garden runs back up, still has retaining walls here. And the house on top stands on that system. And the system of these columns and rooms, somehow it reminds me of the paintings by Mondrian he made when he went to New York, Boogie Woogie. So you have these lines of Mondrian, but suddenly he made them into dots, like the lanes of cars with traffic. But here, these columns, they define rooms, and rooms making almost a measurement of the plan of the house which is on top, which sits here actually. And other rooms popping out, being outdoor or being indoor. And there's also something happening. There's a mix between columns, because we were puzzled by the fact we wanted to make a concrete column house, but then you have the problem of how do you put glass. And again, maybe, I don't know, it's reappearing, coincidence or not, we wanted to put the glass in between the columns, but have no frames. So we decided to mix actually two types of columns. You have a concrete column supporting the house, and you have wooden columns being able to take the glass and sometimes supporting also the house by reinforced part in steel inside. But so there's this kind of mix of columns, and both of them that I would have to go back here. This is a wooden part, and this is all made out of concrete, again with a wooden door in there. This is the garage, by the way, and this is the living room, kind of. So that mix in the plan is not visible, and in detail it becomes visible. And then again, also, almost as a Roman villa, you have the columns defining the rooms. This infills of the floors, they're always different. They're all of a similar tonality, so they're brownish, but one is terrazzo, one is big concrete tiles. There's a piece which is a patio. There's a polished concrete again, a leather floor, a wooden floor, terrazzo again, tiles, and so on. So these switches we liked. And this is a funny part, it's the garage. The garage has the most, let's say, luxurious finishing. It's the marble cladding. So when you're inside, you see the light coming through. But at the same time, it is also, in a way, from the living room, you look at it. And it also makes a block between, let's say, street and inner courtyard. There's a kitchen next door, and so on. So it is, in a way, a very strange block that also works as you're inside, but actually you look at it all the time from outside also. And then again, that system. Here, this is indoor still, but here, these chairs, they stand outside. These are living rooms where objects just stand, and again, a mix of columns. So concrete columns, these are wooden ones, concrete, and so on. And sometimes the ceiling goes up a bit, and the floor is flush with these beams even in the ground. Sometimes this floor steps down here, and the ceiling is straight with this horizon defined by the beam. And infills. These are super thin, almost paper-like doors we designed to be able this is the hallway, to be able to shut off and at the same time have these white, very thin infills as doors. And sometimes they become cupboards. And there's a strange cupboard at the side running through the whole house, ending up here at the street side, as a little office is here behind. All these things, and here you can see the leather floor, by the way, and this is the concrete floor. So they're very similar, but still very different. So one is hard and cold, the other one is soft and warm, and smells even very nice. Again, that cupboard, and becomes some moment a stair that there's an outdoor stair going up all these terraces, but there's a point mirrored, there's a stair here behind the columns being part of that cupboard. And there you go up again in the original house. And this is a moment where you really see this pedestal effect, the socle on which you have the other house. And these two universes is also very important to be able to understand life as something very complex and something that could cope with even these two extreme universes. Why not? And the bedrooms are here. The old stair just running down with the existing tiles, and underneath the column house. And this is the terraces on top, the patio. And this was the original front door. It's the bathroom today. So the bath is standing in front of this window, which was the entrance door. A piece which is even left open as a loggia, and the back garden going up. This is from the back. The garden we also have designed together with Bas Metz, our, let's say, favorite landscape architect. Very interesting wall he put here. A wall made out of certain marble coming from Lapland in north of Scandinavia. Very beautiful, almost like a frozen nature or a painting. Okay, next project, rooms. Venice, again. Venice 2010. And this is not the Giardini, this is the Arsenale. The Arsenale is the other site for the architecture biennial, but it's a very strange part of the Arsenale. The Arsenale actually lays, here somewhere, very big old military halls or warehouses. And in the back of that Arsenale, there's a very small garden, this one. And when Kazuyo Sejima invited us, she was a bit puzzled by who putting where and so on. So she discovered this building in the back of the garden, which was completely overgrown by wilderness. And she asked us, what about you doing something with that? And there was no budget, obviously. So, okay, why not? We decided to work together with Bas Prinsen, since we have this kind of strange parallel parcours. He makes his pictures, we make our collages. I didn't talk yet a lot about collage, but it's very important for us. And at the same time, we thought, like, why not doing a project together there? Your independent work, our architecture, your pictures, our pavilion maybe, still didn't know. So this is a picture he made somewhere in China, very beautiful. So the plan is simple. Well, it was simple already when we started. This is the existing building. It's 7 rooms in a sequence. And it's an old warehouse of the army, some storage building. And quite beautiful in a way, very simple, with these doors each time, entering it from that existing garden. And that garden had grown really against the building. What we decided to make was somehow the building still needed an idea that you could see it, at least, in the back of that garden. And also, what we liked is, could you make something that connects all these rooms and all these doors coming out of them together? And this is our intervention, actually. It's a big canopy in front of the existing building, giving it a garden canopy or a terrace in front, which would also connect all these rooms together. And inside, we didn't show much, but there we decided that we could show work of as well Bas as our collages. And the canopy was very simple, no budget, but still, why not? A super thin column, a super thin beam, and there is just this very light membrane on top. And it mirrors this angle of the existing building. It's half of the building, basically. And there's the garden, which we had to clear completely, so we were working there 2 weeks with a team of students and employees of us completely in the wilderness, really. But it was beautiful to be there, and so this is how it looked. This is a bit an example. That was a neighboring building, but it looked not entirely like that, but almost. So we cleared this bush and then had the gravel that the biennial lays out everywhere, had it until our pavilion and even till our neighbor, and it made that space here. And this is the existing building. That space that you could access and you could see already from far away, and it would just open these doors. And all interventions in this project we decided would be similar. So you had the existing building, but all the extras were actually made out of steel, white painted. So you have a chair, you have a column, and you have a plate. So all the images, considering Venice, it's very humid conditions in summer, we didn't want to print like on paper and then hang in frames or something like that our images. No, we just said, okay, let's paint steel plates. Actually, they're aluminum, but metal plates, paint them white, and go through an inkjet printer with them and paint the image immediately on the paint, or print the image immediately on the paint. So all of them, there were objects. We even repainted these doors in the same white, and there were explanation panels in the same aluminum printed on top of the white paint, saying what was in this room, this particular room. And the rooms themselves, they look very basic. They were just as we found them. We had to clean them again. But for the rest, they showed images. A collage at the right side of a project we made for Ceuta, a Spanish enclave in Morocco. Another border project, let's say. And a picture Bas took when he came with us there, and he took a very beautiful picture. And they were just in that same space, confronted. Another room, these we couldn't get out, it was very heavy. But the project, the Korean project, I will show you later, a picture of Bas in China somewhere. And then in room number 5, we had, suddenly Venice came back. Venice 2008, you could see. And finally, maybe most important, this picture made by Bas of our canopy, and almost showing how this place, this garden, this existing building, how you could add something to that, and by almost nothing. It's just again a very 5 centimeter diameter column, this roof, and the existing nature, gravel, and it's cutting up the image. It makes a cutout here. It makes actually, again, with very little means, architecture. So cutouts. Don't know how far we are. I don't have the time here. Don't know when we started neither. Okay, cutouts. I will go fast. This is a city, a new city for South Korea. 500,000 people had to be housed here. In this area, rice fields, a river. A new city, like almost like Brasilia. How could you think a new city starting from scratch? It's crazy, obvious, but why not? This is a view from the mountains to the valley, and you see a city being designed as a grid that we implemented inside this valley. We didn't build in the mountains, so the mountains were cutting a bit away from the grid. A city of 3.5 by 3.5 kilometers. A city that was defined by a grid, but not the traditional grid that we know. The grid where the streets define blocks, not the Manhattan grid, nor the Cerda grid of Barcelona. No, this is a new type of grid. It's also for a new city. 2025 was the start date for building. So how could you think a new city? And a city that could be already from the moment you start building it, could be somehow spatial, not be just a piece of infrastructure. Again, that switch from infrastructure to architecture. So what we decided was, let's not put the buildings between the roads. No, let's put the buildings on top of the roads. There are no roads, they're just buildings. So basically, these lines, they're all built mass. And they create rooms, city rooms. So by making city walls, you can make city rooms. And each of them could be a very different universe. Because actually, with that program, imagine 500,000 people, how much would that take in square meters? We did some very basic mathematics, not complicated, no diagrams, just a little paper where you can say, okay, maybe people need per person, per capita, something like that in square meters, including public space, including public institutions, including commercial space, and so on, offices. So we decided that half of the city could be built in these walls. Walls of 15 meter thick, more or less, making rooms of 180 by 180 meters. And these could become like parks, but could also become neighborhoods or even other developments. And in their height, 10 floors, they would frame and make rooms. And actually, no cars would be there because there is an enormous extended metro system just connecting almost each room with each room. And it's funny because if you think of it, the city could be almost like a house, just the extreme big version of it, where you, as in a house, walk from living room to bedroom to etc. Here you would walk from the room with, I don't know, some development, to the park room next door, and so on. And actually, what was defining the city, we deliberately cut away out of the image because it became its background. So these white surfaces, obviously they wouldn't be white and real, but still, why not? Why not? It doesn't matter. These are background to what was the actual furniture almost of the city. Until even the collapse of the small unit of the private unit and the bigger units, you could roof a complete room and make an inside out of it. And it had also a clear-cut edge, this city. Opposed to Seoul, where it had to be a counterweight for, this city would end and would have a clear border where, again, rice fields could go on. Belgium, again. Cut out already, always in the aerial picture, you see the site. It's a little town, quite charming in Belgium, called Tielt. Tielt, there, this client has a computer store and gives computer services, and asked us to make her headquarters, let's say, here, and at that spot. And it's a strange site, it has this strange shape, leftover of real estate development around it, but finally a beautiful shape, we thought. Why not making that into the project? And also a very long wall. So in the street there was only backsides and garages, but a wall where behind that the project had come. So that wall, what about it? Could you not make a project with a wall? This is how it finally looks like. It's breaking up that wall that runs along the street, but makes even a bigger one. And that's what we decided, is actually that the site itself was such a beautiful shape already that just by putting a wall along the whole side, we could make already the first project, its first interior. And then inside it, we decided to put two buildings actually. One in the front at the street side here. Here's the street is going like this. And one in the back. And identical buildings mirroring itself over a court that they defined then. And all these margins between, let's say, the crazy shaped wall and these very rationalist buildings, all these margins are very important because they start to also add to the project what it could not foresee itself. On the second floor there's an apartment and some more offices, and there's a store here, so the shop of the computer. And here we could build up the walls until 2 floors high, only here. So here it's almost like a garden wall. These are 2 floor high. And here you see that also the wall as if it unfolds from the volumes that these are. And that's also how we designed them, because this wall is made out of brick. We could make these very light because it had already its first protection, its first interior. So here you can see these are these walls being painted white at the inside, and these boxes, the actual buildings with the program, are very lightweight structures with a steel structure, this cladding of polycarbonate facades. And sometimes you get the glass facades, where you have the store or the shop. Again, some details. I'm not going to go into that, but a very lightweight steel structure. Again, the wall, and how it embraces, and again, not these existing the new buildings, how it folds away from it, how these margins, very important, are almost becoming extremely interesting spaces. They are gardens now. This was still when it was just finished. The building itself. And how also it again makes a cutout and shows glimpses of this context, which is tilt. And in the facing of 2 buildings, one to the other. So there's the similar facade here in glass, there too, and a concrete little court in between them. Boxes, last chapter. This is a site in Belgium also, in Kortrijk, actually very near this big exhibition complex I showed in the beginning with the parameters. It's a competition we won for the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce headquarters of West Flanders. So that was our site, this whole thing actually. This is the building. So an office building. What could you do with an office building? Well, we like this kind of very straightforward things. So this is a box. It's made out of curtain wall. It's actually basically just glass with a nice detailing. Behind it, it shows the working of the office floors. A very bare concrete structure sitting behind it. Again, quite low budgets we had, so why not just doing the minimum inside, which are just almost garage-like structures in concrete that could house all the people and show just to the street its interior. That's the billboard it is. At the same time, it's a box because it shows a clear volume to the street with this glass facade. And At the same time, also, this building is actually not as big as it seems. It's actually 2 wings embracing in the back of the building a square. And the front, and this is the actual orientation of the plan, meaning north is up here. The front we could completely glaze because it was facing north, and we didn't have a real problem with, let's say, solar protections. Again, in the back, we had a bigger problem. This is the south. And it actually, this building has 2 sides, so it's almost like the Roman god Janus, who has these 2 faces. So the face to the street is this completely glazed building. The face to the garden, we actually defined with it, is a more closed building. It's almost a corner embracing this deck and also opening up to the garden. And that we could do also because the terrain has a slight slope. So you enter the building on the top of this floor, which has a patio here. And this facade is completely different. It is been dressed by steel screens that could also become finally the floor of that same universe. So it's really like an XYZ Cartesian space defined by a very narrow Indian building made out of glass, and these grills protecting it from the sun, becoming also the floor to enter the building. And inside, as I said, it's very bare, just visual, or you don't hide anything, just concrete slabs and some stairs and offices, obviously. And the stairs, maybe the last thing is the stairs. They're the protagonists inside. They become very important because there are 2 stairs in the building. One is a straight stair sticking through all the floors. Another one is curved as a screwdriver. The same straight stair just bent. And standing also almost as being part of the furniture, but still being the stair in that space. Also, this is a structural stair, so it's made out of concrete, as these floors are, but prefabricated concrete put there, and there even the floor slabs are resting on this edge in metal that again the stairs carries, and the stair brings it down, and there's a metal beam underneath, which is the same one you can see here. So there's another stair standing on this beam. So like this goes through the whole building, and again from the street you just get this. And what is funny also is that even outdoors could be in that building. So there's a big patio here behind the glass. The stair goes up, comes outdoors here. The, let's say, executive floor or the director's floor has an outdoor space private. But even the machines, they stand in the same logic just behind the glass, like these pieces of furniture here and these cupboards and tables. Very normal things. Also, the machines stand like big cupboards behind the glass. This project, second box project, is a project in Sharjah. Sharjah is an emirate next to Dubai. And Sharjah has a biennial of art, quite an important one on a world scale. Sharjah is like Dubai, been developed since the 50s extremely, since the discovery, actually the 70s, since the discovery of oil. So here you can see what that gives. It's quite hardcore. Just asphalt everywhere, buildings, concrete everywhere. This is the old seaside, but it's a harbor now. Streets everywhere. And actually, you can see also pieces of old Sharjah before the oil. This was a fortress laying at the seaside before. These were all, or are all, like old palaces, very beautiful structures. And strangely enough, I mean, these days, the Emirates and the whole Middle East start to realize that what about it after oil? What is still our identity? And heritage becomes more and more important in this area. So after they destroyed basically everything, suddenly they are going to preserve these little leftovers and quite beautiful palaces, actually. And in that context of heritage, they organized the biannual, but there's this huge street cutting it up. There's one side here, there's one side here, and there's one side a bit further here, all inside of these kind of very beautiful palaces. And we were asked, together with also Sana and Studio Mumbai and some other people, to think about how could you also make public interventions in these huge spaces, and how could you link a bit all these sites together. And our project are these three white cutouts again. And this image is a image of reference or inspiration. This is Dubai in the 50s, so no oil yet. Beautiful. It's palaces made out of coral stone and lime plaster. With roofs, there's not so much wood there. It's mangrove wood as structures, so all these have small rooms, very beautiful structures. And these, we were interested in these also, like perimeters made out of palm leaf woven kind of nets or mat-like structures. Palm leaves, obviously, palm is very abundant there. And people settling next to the existing city, and these kind of beautiful perimeters they built just in the sand to define a little garden, their house, a palm tree, again sand. So a very lightweight idea of development. Informal, but later it becomes formal, and maybe one guy gets rich and builds here then the palace. So in this destructed heritage area, what could we still do? And we decided to actually add new buildings to it. New buildings that would introduce in a small, in a almost sneaky way, or like almost smuggle in public space. Because public space in the Middle East, it's a very strange thing. I mean, it's not like we know the squares and streets. Public space is very different. It's almost always indoors. It has a certain privateness, but it's still public. So in this labyrinth, as these old city pieces are, sometimes you could find big courtyards, like here. Sometimes they're mosques, sometimes they're palaces, and so on. But they're extremely beautiful, hidden places in this maze, which is the Arabic city. And in this big void left from development, we added three new structures that would fill these voids and make new buildings. But the buildings themselves, they're actually very thin perimeters with inside gardens, each of them being slightly different but actually almost the same, and filling up and again creating these tensions of the maze towards the existing building. And the dots you see are actually palm trees. Because this is our project, it's a collage we made of it, some technical detailing. And this is a final result. So we made three of these, three different sites, and each of them were just places that had a pavilion-like structure as a building, but immediately accessible to it was a garden behind it. And we managed to even import, or let's say bring full-grown palm trees there to get a real lush garden inside, in the shade of what is normally this extreme harsh concrete landscape. You could sit in the shade here, and so on. Each of the gardens also had one element in the middle made out of concrete. Well, I'll come back to that. And this is a screen of the actual facade. It's the same screen we used in Kortrijk for this big screens hanging in the big perimeter around the fairground. So it's a metal mesh that in this case has been painted in white, so you get this very strange, almost transparency, but still it makes a skin. And skin, as I said, is very important. This is a detail of that skin, how it's hanging to the very simple structure. And openings were made by just rolling up that same metal mesh and making here it fixed. And you could see, and this is what I was talking about, each of them had a certain point of gravity, and this was a cylindrical wall made out of concrete. In this case, it's the juice bar. Here you can see it. In other cases, there is a cylinder which is a drinking fountain. There's another one which is a very, very big wall, cylindrical, where only the inside is accessible and the outside of the garden is even more wild with bushes and so on. So, but these three, they were actually added to the tissue of the city, and they're still there today. So they're not temporary installations, they're real definitive pavilions standing there for also just people today, even outside the biennial. What is also very beautiful is these shadows of the leaves hitting the screens, and you cannot see it in the picture, but they move a bit, they're flexible. So the strangeness of that skin. In the last project, remember the skin, but it's also in the Middle East. This time Bahrain. Bahrain, at the time we won the silver line in 2010, Bahrain won the golden line as a country for their exhibition on architecture. And somehow we got to know each other, and they asked us to make a project a bit later, two years later. And today we will almost start building the project, but it's not a typical like bling bling project of the Middle East. This is not a tower, it's not a huge museum. No, it's a small interventions in that same old tissue, which they start to really see as their heritage. This is a part of Manama, Muharraq, I'm sorry. Manama is the capital, but Muharraq is a neighborhood of Manama, basically. And it's one of the first settlements of Bahrain. Bahrain is an island, and it has the same typical maze-like structure. It's beautiful to walk in between these little roads and completely get disorientated. A typical Medina-like structure. And in there's all houses, obviously. New houses, old ones, higher, lower. Courtyards everywhere. There's only courtyards as outdoor space. These are coincidences almost. There are no real public spaces. So we got a project there for two small projects for houses that were called dar. Dar is the Arabic word for house, but today dar means it is a center where locals come to play traditional music. Actually, Bahrain has a huge pearl diving tradition. So pearl divers would make this music and play, and this still goes on today. despite the disappearance, let's say, of the pearl business, still the music survives. And this music, these people who play in these houses, this project is for them. It's for them and also for the city. So how could this traditional music survive and still be vital in this maze, vital on even a level above local? And these are projects. These are two images for one of the projects. And as you can see, it's a box. The existing is a very low building, 1 floor. This is an addition to the existing, and they somehow have a relation. In a strange way, the daar, as a typology, it's the typical space where rooms, and we discovered we're almost like Arabic architects, traditional ones, where rooms were just put around a court, one next to the other, with a palm tree in the middle. That is the house. That's the typical house from that time, old house, I mean. So how could you add something to that? And what we found interesting is that obviously it's full of new developments. We're not talking about a city that's been preserved 100 years ago. No, it is still alive. Buildings of 5 or more floors are being put in that same maze, and they are 10 meters high and so on. So we shouldn't make these old structures today. No, in our extension we make a building that is high, that has several floors. But it takes the idea of a house. It's almost like the Le Corbusier domino. I'm trying to look for the right image. So slabs and columns. That's it. The building is only about floor plates and columns supporting them, with some stairs going through them. And it provides space. Space underneath here, space here, and so on. And what is crucial is that in that climate, and then I have to go back, you also need to protect yourself from the sun, obviously, and the heat. And we just made a dress over the building, like a big garment or a cloth or curtain hanging over the building as such and making its tapered shape. And for the rest, it just had space inside. The plan is very simple. This is the existing house. This is the addition we make. And on the ground floor, it relates to this maze of the Arabic streets. But it's also what they call a mejlis. Mejlis is the place where people can gather, or they play music, but also communities could use this space for meetings and so on. The structure is not just columns. It's quite precise, almost like a temple put there to support the next slab. There's no bracing whatsoever, and there's only a pavilion standing inside, recessed from its facade here, so from the screens it's been dressed with, and it creates this intermediate climate, and this is the real inside climate. In a facade, different floors again, and the different plans, so ground floor. And what is also, all the extras like a toilet, some air cooling, cupboards, stairs, are all placed in this zone which has been protected from the sun, but which is actually outside. Each of them. And here you have the floors getting smaller for the typical shape that has this building. The inside you can see this furniture, the box, and then the skin. And the skin it's also possible, by the way, because of it's a very flexible new kind of mesh we are now developing. You could also pull it up completely. So in the previous picture, this would be in the daily use situation, let's say. But this whole side here and all 4 sides can be pulled up almost like a small theater. And then this inside, downstairs, becomes part of the street where, as a measureless, it could be a small concert or something like that. And this is the second project. It's extremely similar, just a bit smaller. This is, again, a dar, as I was saying, rooms surrounding a courtyard, beautiful plants, 1 floor, made out of coral stones and lime plaster. An extension with a guest residence and also a measureless on the ground floor for music playing and so on. And maybe also the old building, even older than the other one, framed by our new building and a neighbor which was reaching that height. The same detailing, just a smaller version. And its relation. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take 2 questions.
No questions is also fine.
Oh, I see one.
First off, I just wanted to say thank you for the lecture. It was really fantastic. I have a question in regards to kind of contemporary practice and or method for designing. And one thing I noticed within your representation, both in this presentation and on your website, other places, that you always speak through architectural drawing, this is a method that you use to communicate with. And often today we find the diagram being used as a method for thinking about architecture. And I would just like to hear you comment on this method and your method for designing and for representing architecture.
Okay, I could explain it in a very pragmatic way, which is we are 2 partners. We are very different, very similar also. We believe both in the idea that even to each other we have to somehow talk with physical material. It's not about just words. It's about what does the plan look like? How is the section? Could you draw me a perspective? This is the way how we work. And that's very direct and that's very helpful, I would say, also in our practice. This is how we make architecture. But then again, isn't that always like that? I think we can talk a lot about it, but still there needs to be a plan. There needs to be an idea or even an image of that architecture, and both of them can be very simple. There also needs to be a project in the making, and I think what we do believe in is that by making architecture very very clear, making images show what you really dream of or think, but that's not a final image like this one. That's almost like a negotiation space for, in this case, client and yourself to come to a project. That is your only tool as an architect you have, we believe. So they are, we don't make like 10,000 images per project. No, this project has been made by these 2 images. And the plans you saw before, or actually the plans you saw were already execution plans, which are more defined, but anyway, they stay the same. They're very simple. And I think we believe in just talking with the means that we have as architects, which is plan, section, image. And obviously text could be with that. Why not? But these are our tools. Is that answering your question? So there is a second question, maybe.
I'm wondering, you mentioned collage, and I don't know if you had more elaboration on how collage plays into your practice and work method.
Yeah, you see here a good example. Well, it is important. I think the degree of abstraction you make in a collage, and we're not making collages by gluing paper together anymore. We never actually did. We grew up with Photoshop, no problem. But still, I think the idea of the constraint of collage is beautiful. The degree of abstraction you get there is, as I said before, is that space where you can come to a project, and it needs time. Today we're only busy with fast. No, you can age a project in a collage. And sometimes this abstract collage looks scarily similar as the realized building. And I took out a lot of collages this lecture because it was already so long. But there was a lot of collages next to the realized projects, and there you can see really the 2 working together as a picture of Bas, which is again also, I would say, a sort of a collage. It's a frame he takes. He decides on this is the ideal way of taking a picture of that project. I mean, all these layers that come to a project make the actual body of the project. And that's, for us, very important. And degrees of abstraction and actually complementary products, basically a collage shows one angle, the plan shows another one, and so on. That's the full, later on, a picture by Bas adds even another layer to that. That full like set of things is the project. And even when things are built, these thousands of interpretations you get on projects, they make it. And why not? There's not one truth or one story in each project. They are alive, and these collages they allow us to keep a project alive even when it's not built. Thank you.